Hello, my name is Katina Frazier, and this is my theoretical stance presentation. I want to start by giving a little background on my students. I currently teach second grade. I have 23 students, but I am teaching a very transient population, so that number can differ from 23 to 26 students at any time in the year. My students are 7 to 8 years old, and I teach at a Title I school where we have some parental involvement, but not a whole lot. All students in my class are currently reading below or far below grade level, and over half of the class is returning from virtual learning. The theoretical stance that I take for my class this year is the bottom-up approach. The bottom-up approach to literacy relies on a linear process for literacy learning. Readers master one step before moving on to the next. These steps build on each other to create fluent readers who can comprehend what they read. This is in contrast to the top-down approach, in which readers use background knowledge as the basis for comprehension. The theories that will be explored in this presentation are the information processing model, which was created by Atkinson and Shiffrin. We will also explore Goals model and LaBerge and Samuel's automatic information processing model. In the information processing model by Atkinson and Shiffrin, it gives the process of the way memory works. And in this model, information moves through stages to reach memory and be retrieved at the right time. In Goals model, it suggests that cognitive processing goes from lower order to higher order thinking in a linear fashion. This means that in order to get to the next step, you must complete the first step. And lastly, LaBerge and Samuel's automatic information processing model includes decoding words before comprehending the words so that more attention can be used on the comprehension rather than the decoding. But the decoding must take place before the comprehension. So let's start by talking about the information processing model. Once again, this was developed by Atkinson and Shiffrin. And in this model, information moves through different stages for processing, reflection, learning, saving, and retrieval. In this process, information starts in the sensory memory, and then it moves to working memory. In the working memory, it is processed and stored temporarily. We also call working memory short-term memory. That information is either transferred to long-term memory or it is forgotten. Something that is very important about this model is that there are different short-term memories and there are multiple stages in progressing through short-term memories. Also, information can flow constantly between short-term and long-term memory, which is why you see these arrows going from short-term memory to long-term memory where you save information, and then from long-term memory back to the working memory where we can retrieve information. There is a constant loop of saving and retrieving information between the short-term and long-term memory. Next, we have Goals model, in which reading moves in discrete stages, which starts when the eye catches input from each letter. This is called the iconic stage. After it goes through the iconic stage, which is where we identify the letter, it moves to the decoder, where we assign the sound to the letter. After the decoder, we move on to the phonemic tape, which is where we store the sound. After that, we move through other processes that he labels the librarian, the lexicon, the primary memory, Merlin, the syntactic and semantic rules processor, and finally, the place where sentences go when they are understood. This process shows reading moving through a linear process, meaning that you cannot move to the next step until the first one is completed. Basically, Gold's model moves from letters to sounds to words to sentences and paragraphs, and finally, comprehension of text. Gold's model was taken and simplified in what we call the simple view of reading. In the simple view of reading, students must decode and comprehend the language in the text before they can achieve full comprehension. So once again, we are still moving in a linear fashion where students must decode before they can comprehend. This takes Gold's model and just simplifies it into those two steps. But it still functions in a stage-by-stage process, once again, meaning that they must decode before they can comprehend. The final approach that we will talk about today is LaBerge and Samuel's automatic information processing model. This model has 5 components that leads to fluent readers that can decode quickly and they can spend more time comprehending the text. The 5 stages that we go through are visual memory, phonological memory, episodic memory, semantic memory, and attention. In visual memory, we process the text, and then it moves to the phonological memory where we give sounds to the visual images that we see, which are letters. After the phonological memory, it moves to the episodic memory, which is where content about the target information is recorded. From there, we move to the semantic memory, where information other than what we are trying to understand is stored so that we can focus on that one thing. And the last component in this model is attention, which is very important to this model. When we think about attention, we want to talk about external attention and internal attention. External attention is directly observable, such as the eyes following the teacher, you sitting quietly, what the teacher can see. But in order for the automatic information processing model to work, students have to be paying internal attention, which is what's happening inside someone's mind. Components include alertness, selectivity, and limited capacity. When a reader is attentive internally, they can read with automaticity, which means that they can complete the reading task without giving too much attention to the decoding of words. How these theories intersect. These theories are consistent with a bottom-up approach because the learning occurs in stages or steps. One step is dependent on the completion of the one before it. They all begin with decoding and letter sound correspondences and ultimately result in comprehension of the text. So why bottom up? I chose this approach for my students this year because they are even further behind due in large part to circumstances out of their control. This is the first normal year back for them since their kindergarten year was interrupted due to COVID-19. Many of my students have gaps in phonics instruction, which is why they need a linear approach that starts with the building blocks and continues. While comprehension skills are embedded in our lessons, we are largely focused on bottom-up strategies to help the students catch up. In my classroom, we focus a lot on identifying letters and sounds, decoding skills and strategies, and also vocabulary. As far as applications to classroom teaching, I personally integrate these models into my teaching through guided reading, technology, and conferring. And I'll explain more about each of these components. During guided reading, I pull groups of students who have the same or similar needs. This allows me to meet them where they are, teach them something new, and give them time to practice. Each group could be working on something different based on their needs. For example, one group could be working on identifying word families and coming up with words that are all in the same word family, and then using that skill to help attack words as they read. Another group might be more focused on fluency because they are already able to use word families and use strategies that we name stretchy snake and chunky monkey to chunk words to chunk sounds together and stretch out sounds in order to segment them. If they're already ready for that, then they can move on to a different step, which is why the groups are created based on those who have the same or similar needs. In guided reading, we get to meet our kids where they are, and we get to build upon what they need, not what is just there, but what they specifically need. We also integrate technology very frequently in my classroom. We use Chromebooks throughout the day. And these are two of the programs that we use a lot that are consistent with the bottom-up approach. Chromebooks allow students to use many programs that are aligned with the bottom-up approach. The first program I would like to talk about is Lexia, which is a personalized program that moves students through levels based on a predetermined skill set. They take a pretest at the beginning of the year and they move through the levels. Students encounter new things in each level that build upon the previous levels. The second program that I like to use is MobyMax, which is an adaptive learning program that allows students to practice foundational reading skills, phonics, blending, letter sounds, and reading comprehension. They also can do sight words. This program is structured in a way where teachers can assign things to students, or students can choose what to work on. But either way, it comes with each stage of the reading process in order for students to grow from identifying letters to the ultimate goal of comprehension. The last thing that I use in my class is reading conferences. We are a growing reader school, and we are learning about how conferring with students is beneficial for literacy. Using the Research Complement Teach conference as outlined by Jennifer Saravallo, I can notice what my students are doing as they read and prompt them to the next step. Meaning that if I'm seeing that students are chunking words and using word families once again, I can move them on to the next step in their reading ability. They might need to next go to understanding what's being said in sentences and paragraphs. So I can ask probing questions to help get them to their goal. What I have learned. Bottom-up approaches work well for my students this year. However, I know that in previous years, a top-down approach would have worked better with the students that I had then. Because my students are missing so much of what they need foundationally, this works best. As the year continues, I plan to use more of this approach. I have seen growth in my students in these few short months. As students progress, some top-down strategies may be included in our practice. Thank you all for listening to my presentation. I look forward to seeing the feedback and suggestions for more great use of these approaches in my practice. Thank you.